Well, Michel Barnier, the European Union's chief negotiator, has always been very tough and disciplined when it comes to these trade talks because he wants the best for the European Union and the EU 27 nations. Now, one issue during the Brexit trade talks that's always been very important is fisheries and what's going to happen to UK waters. Will the EU still have free access to come and take our fish? Or are they going to treat us like a self-governing and independent country? Now, Michel Barnier has finally caved in and is willing to compromise when it comes to fisheries. He's now begging President Macron of France and other countries, but specifically Macron, to drop the demands because he knows that David Frost, the negotiator from the UK side, and Boris Johnson are not going to change their mind. So the latest we have is that the Brussels negotiator fired the warning shot to France ahead of travelling to London for discussions with their UK counterpart, Lord Frost. In a private meeting of the EU 27 ambassadors, Mr. Barnier signalled that member states had to show more realism on cuts to fishing quotas. He said that maintaining the status quo in UK waters will not be feasible. And I mean, someone has to say that to Macron because I don't think he actually understands this. He's also added, Barnier, that the most concerned member states will need to explore room to move towards the UK in terms of quota allocation, provided the UK meets the EU on governance and state aid. So obviously he's willing to compromise, but he is coming back with the state aid regime and the usual stuff. In reality, what's happening is that while this is obviously good news, because even Barnier, because he's still technically leading the negotiations, has changed his mind and is now begging other countries like the Netherlands and France to drop these demands. It's a victory for Britain. On the other hand, Michael Gove has now revealed he's spoken to the House of Lords and one of the select committees, exposing the European Union's revenge plot to block the key trade export routes with the United Kingdom. So this is obviously slightly embarrassing because Michael Gove has now argued that the EU had not ruled out blockade of trade routes in the UK. He's, as I say, was talking to the European Union Committee of the House of Lords and said that the problem is that Brussels had not listed the UK as an individual country. He claimed that this meant that the UK would still remain an extension of the EU and would not be able to trade freely as a third nation post-Brexit. This is not the Brexit that people voted for, and this is not the Brexit that we have been promising to deliver. And obviously, when you have people like Michael Gove and Lord Frost in government arguing in our interest, that's good. Now, to discuss all this, but also the way the mainstream media have been treating Brexit as a topic, and also the lockdown measures and everything else, I sat down with Talk Radio's one and only Mike Graham. Yeah, you do.
Very bijou little place you've got here.
Yeah.
Very central. Very nice.
Yeah, very central, yeah.
Not better than having to travel all the way out to Skye to be insulted by Kay Burley.
Oh, yes. No, I mean, speaking of obviously the media and everything else been happening, so what the latest news that we have is with Brexit, the European Union and Michel Barnier they're getting tired. They're like, they know that the UK are not going to change their mind on fisheries. Yeah. So he's basically begging Macron. Obviously, what's your view on that? But also, because of all the lockdown stuff that's been happening, the media aren't really reporting on Brexit anymore, are they?
Not really. I think they've taken their eyes off the ball altogether because, I mean, the Westminster bubble, as you know, Maya, is very kind of one-dimensional. I think you can only do one thing at a time. Yep. And they're worried, I think, if they take their eyes off Boris Johnson and then start to look over there to Brussels to see what Michael Gove's doing and to see what the Brexit conversation is really like. I don't think they'll get into it until it gets a little bit closer. I mean, there's supposed to be a big deadline coming up at the end of October, and yet they don't. I mean, people are writing stuff about it, but what I'm finding slightly sort of disappointing, I suppose, is all the same people who made all the same warnings this time last year and the year before that are still doing it. They're all talking about, there's going to be car parks in Kent, lorries everywhere. Yeah. We're going to have. I actually had a Lib Dem on the other day saying, "Oh yeah, of course. Well, we know that there's going to be, shortages of pharmaceuticals. There's going to be stuff going off at the ports." I'm going, sorry, are we going back to 4 years ago here? It's because they're making all the same arguments, which didn't come true before, and are not going to come true again.
Have you had any of the typical Ramonas on your show recently, like Femi or
I don't really have promoters on the show. I mean, I occasionally have Ms. Jardine from Edinburgh from the Lib Dems because I quite like her and she's quite good to have a row with. But people like Femi don't interest me. I mean, there's absolutely no point. I don't even know why anybody would get him on. He's of no interest to me at all.
Well,
we've left the European Union. We're not going to rejoin it. There wasn't ever a second referendum. That was what he was campaigning for last year. It's all over. So he should really go and get his job back at the pizza parlour, I think, and do something useful.
We don't know exactly what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks with Brexit, because the deadline is the first deadline that David Frost has created is mid-October until the EU decide if they want to accept our offer or no deal, obviously. But what are your feelings? Do you think?
I mean, my feeling is like everything else. I mean, when they started launching this kind of very supposedly defiant position where they were going to sue the British government, you're kind of going, well, that's all very well, but you can't really sue the British government because one, you want to sue us in the European court, which we're not really going to be part of, and we don't really have to do anything that you say. So my feeling is that there will be a deal of some kind eventually done, but it will be more beneficial, I think, to us. I know there are those who worry that Boris is going to give the store away. And he's going to make sure that Britain doesn't get as good of a deal as they want. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to come out of it okay. And I think by the end of this year, we'll be out of COVID, I think, a bit more. I think the government will have to release a bit more of the economy, and they'll have to make people be able to return to work more normally. And I think, come January the 1st, I think things are going to look a lot better.
Yes, and I think, speaking of the lockdown and everything, again, going back to the media, you yourself, obviously, when the whole thing started back in March, like everybody else, because we didn't know exactly what it was, how dangerous it was, and what measures we have to take. A lot of people were patient, but the recent policies, and also now that we know the results of some of the policies before, and how counterproductive some of them have been, like 10 p.m. curfew, rule of 6, things like this. What do you think?
Well, I started to lose faith with Boris Johnson, who I tried to keep faithful to, not because I'm a Tory, because I'm not, but because I quite like Boris. But Boris has really, funnily enough, he's actually handled the Brexit situation quite well.
Yeah, which is good.
Which is good news. But he's just been all over. I think the trouble is that they're putting all of their faith in these two idiotic scientists, Whitty and Valens, neither one of which really is actually medically properly kind of invested in the whole project. All they want to do is to try and make sure that when there's an inquiry, everyone says that they did the right thing. Well, they're clearly not doing the right thing anymore. And when they finally admitted that actually they just made up the 50,000 a day figure to scare people so that people would start behaving, it's like, well, what the hell do you think you're doing?
Well, we're looking at the graphs. It's still not reaching that level. And I think, and then they're now playing this blame game. You've got the politicians in government, from the Prime Minister and the ministers, obviously going with what they say. And then the actual Whitty and Valence and all these guys are now coming out saying that, they're not listening to us.
Yeah.
So wait,
well, good.
Are they listening to you?
Good. Step in the right direction. Well, when you get the Health Secretary getting up in the House of Commons and saying, basically, if you lot don't behave, we won't be able to do any cancer treatments. That's quite outrageous and quite a ridiculous, stupid thing to say. Up in Scotland, of course, Nicola Sturgeon yesterday announced that she's going to basically shut down the economy again in terms of the hospitality business. People are really angry about that. Yeah. And she has she's using the same kind of graphs, the same kind of advice, because what nobody's doing is looking at all the numbers and saying, well, it's all very well that all these people are getting infected, but nobody seems to be dying. Yeah. Nobody seems to be getting that sick, you know? And so it's not the same as it was in March and April.
No.
And I imagine that's partly because there was not so many old people left to die, because a lot of old people have already died.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming that may be part of it, but nobody's talking about that.
No, and obviously on your show you got the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, and obviously I've got my YouTube channel. We have a bit of Rebel. So tonight, obviously, we're going to go out for a drink, and we're going to drink until 10:01 p.m.
Excellent.
We're going to break the rules.
Well, if you get £1,000 fine, you're paying it. But what about when you get these kind of ludicrous rules where they're trying to kind of force you to behave in a certain way? It's like, you don't have to treat us like toddlers. If you want us to do something in a particular way, then tell us. Yep. Don't try and make it so difficult because somebody's taken 3 minutes to put some salad on your burger. Yep. You then find the place because it's 4 minutes past 10. It's nonsensical. And I think most people, certainly most people that call my show, and I realise that they may not all be absolutely representative of the entire country, But they're all sick to death of it, and no, they just don't really. The problem is, I think people have lost faith in the government.
Yep.
Therefore, they don't believe anything they say.
The thing is, I was actually on LBC last night. We were talking about this, and I think, I have criticized the government because they are responsible. But the mainstream media, and by mainstream media, we're talking about the biggest outlets, including the press, the Guardian, and all these guys, from day one. They never reflected the opposite side, anyone who was skeptical.
Right.
And even right now, we've had, obviously, people like Professor Sikora and others kind of writing letters and speaking out saying, guys, this is a terrible idea.
And it's not just Professor Sikora anymore. It's not just Hennigan. It's not just Gupta. There's a lot of them. There's now something like 8,000, I think, people have signed.
But again, we don't really see much about them on Sky News or BBC News. We see them like in the Express or like obviously you guys mentioned it on Talk Radio.
Well, we do. I mean, we brought Peter Hitchens sort of into the light, out of the darkness, if you like, because he basically couldn't get on anything. Now the BBC have seen actually how successful our pieces have been with him. He's on every Monday, and he's been writing about it in the Mail on Sunday. But not everybody sees that because it's a column that's quite far back in the newspaper. But he's now on Any Questions. He gets asked on the BBC quite a lot. And unfortunately, the reason that he came on in the first place was we had a row on Twitter. Because I told him to sit down and shut up, basically. Because I said, what do you know about it? You're telling everybody that they shouldn't be locking down. And this was right at the beginning. Because to be fair, he's been about this all along. And I don't agree with that. I still think that we probably were right to lock down when we did.
Right, that's true.
But now I do agree with him that it's time to just get out of it and lift the sort of the darkness and the gloom and realise that all these people who are getting infected are not getting sick.
No.
Yeah,
and you're right. I mean, a lot of times at the beginning, even speaking to Julia Hollibrew and a number of others, at first, again, because we didn't know much, a lot of people supported the lockdown initially and all that, but then now, obviously, things have changed.
I mean, she had it, and she was quite ill. Yeah. And her husband was quite ill.
And I saw her the day before she got into quarantine. And
did you?
I was scared, but I didn't actually... Although I got my antibodies. Apparently, I had it at some point without any symptoms.
Right.
But that's what even Chris Whitty said. He said that the majority... won't get it, and a tiny minority of them won't have symptoms, and a tiny minority will have symptoms and will be fine. Right. And it's just tiny minority.
I mean, mostly, I think it's 80% of people who have it don't know they've got it.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, it's not exactly, a killer disease that's killing lots and lots and lots of people. It's killing a small number of people, and some people, for some weird reason, seem to get it a lot worse than others.
Yeah, of course. Now, again, we have talked about the media and the government. There's another group of people who's supposed to be there to, have create some scrutiny. The opposition party.
Ah, yes.
So Keir Starmer.
Good old Keir.
Until literally an hour ago, he was literally...
You told me, as I arrived, you said, have you seen the news about Keir? Because I was actually, for the first time, praising him, because I hate people telling me how forensic he is, because to me, he's just incredibly dull.
Yep.
He's not a very good performer. Somebody actually wrote on Twitter the other day, this is a guy who's conducting an investigation and mounting a case against the government, which he's going to present in 4 years. And I'm like, what? We haven't got time for that.
Yeah, but
get on with it. But he actually came out yesterday and said the first sensible thing he's ever said, which was to say to Boris, can you show us some proof that actually this 10 p.m. curfew is scientifically based?
That's the thing. So that's what he said. He was against 10 p.m. curfew. An hour ago, he changed his mind. He's now supporting 10 p.m. curfew.
I mean, this guy sits on more fences than I can imagine. In fact, we did homeschooling today on how to build a fence. We should just ask Keir Starmer on, because, I mean, this guy, should we leave the European Union? Yes. No. Well, it depends where you live. If you live in the northeast, we're leaving.
Yeah.
If you live in the southwest, no, we should remain. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy literally, I don't think has got an actual original policy in his head, has he?
No, that's the thing. There was a time a couple of years ago when people were saying Tory ministers have 4 ovens and all that. So Keir Starmer has like 4 fences around his house, and he's just like with different colours and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the man is. I mean, and also I saw the other day, which was interesting, that Unite have taken some of their money away.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people in the Labour Party are not happy that Starmer's running it, because they're likening him to sort of the great Satan, Tony Blair.
Yeah.
Oh my God, and it's actually great, because it means that even though he's probably the first chance they've got of getting somebody elected for the first time in a long time, and I'd probably Tony Blair, actually. I don't think Brown would have ever won an election. Yeah, and in the end, you're kind of faced with this ridiculous situation where Labour don't seem to want to win. The left of the Labour Party don't seem to want to be in power.
No.
Because the way they're going, there never will be.
I really want to know, because as you said, in the next few weeks we're going to hear more about Brexit again.
Yeah.
I really want to know what his new position is going to be on Brexit.
Well, I don't know, I'm not sure what his old position was. What was his old position?
He kept changing it.
I mean, during the election, as I said, he was for and against staying in it, depending on what constituency he was talking to. So I don't actually know. I mean, he looks to me like he's by kind of birth, he's a Remainer, isn't he? He's a lawyer, lives in North London, hangs about with lots of lefties. He's bound to be a champagne socialist. Therefore, why would he want to leave the European Union?
No, of course not. And it will be interesting to obviously figure out if he's going to be back in a trade deal or is he going to be back in WTO, because these are the two options. So what is he going to do? Is he going to back the government again?
Right.
But obviously we'll keep you guys posted on this channel as usual, because the mainstream media aren't really giving you what you need. But it's fine, because we are the media. Thanks again for coming on the show, and
Pleasure.
I'll see you very soon. I'll see you guys in a pub.